Hello. I know we're jumping in a little bit late here. I mean, only a couple minutes, but we want to give a lot of time to our speakers. So we'll go ahead and get started here. I believe everyone is ready. So again, thanks everybody for joining us in the middle of your week, middle of your day. We're excited to have Pure Wellness as our sponsor today and go over some great information. Our speaker, Brian, is with Pure Wellness, so he knows all of this firsthand. So we're excited to see a little bit presentation from him, and also as a sponsor, give him a chance to go over what Pure Wellness does and what they can offer. Just a few housekeeping notes. As always, I want to remind everyone that we are recording. So for any of your coworkers, colleagues that did register and are not able to attend, they will get that recording in the next few days. And then given a couple weeks, we'll be posting on the YouTube site. We had already prepared Brian here that he may get some late questions through the YouTube presentations as well, but always welcome. All of these programs are interactive, so we want to make sure that there's always questions being asked throughout, and even later afterwards, you can always feel free to email any of us and we can connect you with the speaker. But some great updates from HSMAI. We are, of course, looking for sponsors for every event, just like Pure Wellness has done today, Expedia from last month, and we've got a great opportunity with Out of the Ordinary Adventures coming up in our next program. So if you're interested in sponsoring, please get in touch with info@hsmaisd.com and you'll be connected to the correct person to help you there. There's always great opportunities for full programs or just partial sponsorships. The upcoming programs that we do have, we're working on the virtual team scavenger hunt with Out of the Ordinary group and team adventures. This program, even as of this morning, is kind of in transition. We're looking at possibly the 24th, which is next week, or moving it to the 31st. So stay in tune for that. We'll be updating the exact date and getting that out to everyone tomorrow. But that's going to be a lot of fun. It's a networking and team building event for all of us. So it is free. On April the 13th, we have a program coming up with Glenn Hausman from No Vacancy News, which will be a great update on the state of the industry. This is a historic event for HSMAI, as it's the first time that four different chapters have sponsored together to put together a program. That'll be $5 for members. And it's also a really good time when partnering with these different chapters that you realize the benefit that you have through membership is that you can register for events for any chapter. So once you log into your HSMAI member benefits on the website, other than seeing all of these discounts and different programs and articles available, you can always search events and see what other chapters are doing in different regions to give you an idea, especially during the pandemic, different stages of reopening, and just different topics in general. So great benefits there on the website. I was looking this morning, searching some of our topics that Brian will cover, premium room types, duty of care, Pure Wellness in general is really coming up in a lot of different places, trying to regain that traveler confidence in bookings and how you keep your branding alive through cleanliness. Safety and cleanliness marketing is really a big thing now. So this is important for everybody to understand and gain our market share. So I want to pass everything over to our moderator. But before I do, just remember to stay connected for the most updated information. We want everyone to stay relevant and we want to provide you with relevant information. So stay in touch. Tell us what you want to hear. Our moderator today is Chris Nguyen with OTA Insight. He is also our Vice President of Community Relations and Sponsorship, so you can get in touch with him. And I'm going to turn it over to Chris.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Heather. I appreciate the introduction. Hi, everybody. In case you don't know who I am, again, my name is Chris. I am the Vice President of Community Relations for HSMAI San Diego chapter. don't mind the hair. This is my pandemic transformation, if you will. I'm sure we all have our fair share of that. But today, I'm really excited to introduce you to Brian Shedd, who is going to be our speaker for today. As hoteliers, I'm sure we can all agree that we were faced with two biggest challenges throughout the year. How do we regain traveler confidence around, cleanliness, but also just, how do we prevent viruses and whatnot in the future as well for our future guests? But also at a time when every single penny counts, how do we increase revenue, not just traditionally through rooms revenue or other outlets, but how do we leverage room types such as upgraded room types or premium room types to increase incremental revenue as well? So today, Brian Shedd will be speaking. He is the Senior Vice President of Sales and Marketing for Pure Wellness, the industry leader in airborne virus and bacteria prevention in hotels and resorts. His experience includes senior leadership roles in hotel technology and a decade as a casino executive in Las Vegas. You may have seen his name in articles on Hospitality Net, sharing his expertise on several topics, including, but not limited to, duty of care and virus prevention as well. So some of his articles you can actually access via our website or also the national website as well. So you'll see that across some different areas. So without further ado, Heather, feel free to pass the rights to Brian. And Brian, you can go ahead and take it away.
Brian, you're still,
Yeah.
there you go.
I'm working on finding my unmute scenario. Hold on.
You found it.
Yeah, but I have to press the button. Well, maybe I'll just keep pressing the button. Hopefully this works. All right. Well, hello everyone, and welcome to my home. I'm honored to have you all as guests in my bedroom. Unlike many of you who are probably lucky enough to be working from the office at your property, or maybe an office in your house. My house does not have an office, so I am working from my bedroom. So welcome in kind of a not creepy way. Oh, this says, okay, can you still hear me? Yeah, good, yay. All right, fantastic. I figured out how to unmute myself without pressing the button the entire time, which would have been tiresome. Yeah, so thank you, Chris, and thank you all for spending some time with me. Let's see here. We will get moving. In terms of what we're going to cover today is, as was set up, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the challenges that are currently facing the industry, and we're set to be together for here just shy of an hour. So as I talk about different topics and things, I will preface it by saying I've done what I could to source the very latest information on all of these topics that we're going to be addressing. And as every one of you know, as hoteliers, this stuff changes all the time. So it certainly makes it exciting and interesting for us in the business. But my best efforts have been made to source and reference data and research that is from 2021, as opposed to using a lot of 2020 material, because I think as an industry we kind of didn't know what we didn't know in 2020. And for all of us that are currently employed in hospitality here in 2021, we all deserve a big pat on the back, because there's so many of our friends and colleagues that even now still have not been brought back. So yeah, so we'll talk a little bit about a number of challenges facing the industry. We'll move then into sort of the theme of the presentation, which is around premium rooms and understanding a little bit about what premium rooms, how you can create premium rooms at your property. We'll talk a little bit. I'll give you a short overview of the premium room type that Pure Wellness creates within hotels. I'll share a little bit of the metrics associated with. I can't speak to metrics that you might generate from creating a unique premium room type within your hotel, but I'll give you some information and insight into some metrics that Pure Wellness sees from the major brands that we operate in that you can use as kind of reference material, perhaps, if you're looking into creating premium room types at your property. And then we'll wrap up and we'll have some time for some final questions. But because of the length of the presentation, as you've got questions that pop into your head as we keep going, by all means, feel free to enter them in the chat box, and then I'll just address them as we go. So we'll get started. That's not how I do it. This is how I do it. Okay, great. So, in talking about challenges, new challenges that are facing the travel industry overall, this is certainly not a comprehensive list, but it is I think it tackles some of the high level issues that we're all seeing with respect to travel. And one of those issues is this concept of business travel. Will it return? And when it does return, will it return in its entirety, or will it only return in some component? And I'll share some research that I found on that front. There's some good news and some bad news here. And there's an overall saying that companies are obviously business travel is an expense for companies, and it always has. That isn't anything new. So the reason that companies put executives on the road obviously is because that's how they're able to achieve revenue, and that's how they're able to maintain clients. So people still want face-to-face interaction, even with the prevalence of Zoom and Teams meetings and things like that. It just can't replace that personal interaction. So there's a saying that as soon as a company loses $1 million client, they'll put executives back on the road again. So that said, I think from the airline industry, this is kind of what they're expecting in a realistic scenario. They're thinking that, we're going to probably see 65% or so of our business travel come back, right? And right now, what they're seeing is about 15% of business travel being in play, but they expect to see another basically 50% return probably by the end of this year. The portion of it that is that's I think questionable at the airlines is they're pretty confident that they'll have lost 20% or 19% for sure due to the prevalence of, we've all gotten used to now doing these remote meetings with Zoom and things like that. So I think conservatively, they're expecting that 19% of air travel for businesses simply won't return. But it could flex all the way up to 30, 34%, 36%. I'm not a math major, guys, so 19 plus 17, I can't do that in my head, but I know it's 30 something percent. And so they're thinking that it could get to be, we may not see even that much of it, but they're confident that 65% of it will come back. And I think it's interesting to understand that 65% of business travel that they're confident is going to come back isn't entirely comprised of executives that are flying for sales and revenue meetings. Believe it or not, only about 25% of business travel actually constitutes executives flying for meetings or for revenue purposes, like meeting with clients and sales and things like that. Fully 20% of business travel actually is intercompany meetings that occur. So I think part of the unknown is how many of those intercompany meetings are going to come back in terms of companies flying executives from the East Coast to the West Coast or whatever for in-person stuff. And if the, you know, if the entire 20% comes back, or if we're going to see some sort of a cutback on that front, and maybe instead of meeting 4 times a year, you only get together once or twice a year. So that's not an insignificant portion of that is potentially at risk. And then there's another 5% that is considered business travel, which is people commuting. And I can tell you, I'm based in Dallas. And if you ever try and get on a Chicago flight at 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning, good luck. It's insane how many people choose to live in Dallas and work in Chicago, work in New York. My favorite reference on that front, I fly quite a bit as well. And so I was on a morning flight to Chicago, based out of Dallas Fort Worth, and the airline attendant came on and said, "Listen, we're going to start boarding here in a couple of minutes." And the vast majority of this flight, the Dallas, by the way, is the hub for American Airlines. So, you know, I fly American all the time. And she came on and said, the vast majority of this flight is filled with executive platinum members. So when I announce boarding group number 2, which group number 1 is first class, and then group 2 is executive platinum, she goes, "Please don't bum rush the podium." So you rarely hear that, I think, from an airline, but that gives you an idea in terms of how much commute traffic there was between Dallas and Chicago. So will the airlines see that volume of commuting traffic return? I think that's a question, and I think we'll all find out, but fingers crossed it does.
Brian, we did have a question.
Sure.
So you mentioned that some of the business travel never will return. Do we have data or information on what type won't return?
Yeah, the type of business travel that the airlines aren't expecting to see again is going to come from several sources. One is a cutback, I think, on the number of intercompany meetings that I was talking about, that the companies are flying people from place to place just for the purpose of getting their executives together. And they're thinking a fair portion of those will get cut back so that it's just Zoom meetings, because for now, a year, companies have gotten used to that's the only way they meet is virtually now on these Zoom platforms. So I don't think the airlines are expecting that they're going to see a full return of that type of travel. And then secondly is this the sales travel, where companies have just now gotten, I think, prospects and clients somewhat accustomed to the fact that they're not going to be meeting face to face with an executive to have a presentation on capabilities or services and things of that nature. So, you know, I've been doing business development and sales and marketing for quite a while. And I think myself that number will probably be stout in terms of the amount of businesses that restrict travel for sales executives initially, because it is such an expense for the companies to do that. But I also have a great amount of confidence that as clients, you want to meet the people you're doing business with, and you know, meeting them via screen like this is somehow just not the same as putting, you know, shaking a hand and getting a real in-person exposure to folks. So I give it a couple of years. I think it isn't going to come back fully, probably forever, but I'll bet a lot of it comes back here within 24 months or so. And businesses just realize that that's an important part of it. And I think that's also the case for, you know, for leisure travel. You know, people right now are they're driving from place to place out of concern of getting on an airplane. But the reality of it is we're going to see air travel come back on the leisure side in a big way in the next 24 months or so, as people just become more and more comfortable with it. So So we'll move on to this next point, which is, can companies mandate travel, right? So if airlines are expecting a cutback to occur, are companies able to mandate travel with their employees? And the answer is they can. The research that I have done on that subject has shown that companies are able to mandate travel even now as a component of the job, but they have to be unilateral in doing so, meaning they can't single out certain groups and say, listen, you're mandated to travel as part of your job, but this other group that previously travel was part of their job, they don't have to do it. So from a legal aspect, they need to be, unilateral in how they exercise a mandate to travel. And even more interesting on that subject is the thornier aspect, which is can companies mandate your personal travel? So, and what I mean by that is, can companies say, listen, because of our concern of COVID transmission, we don't want to permit you to personally travel, or we want to have some sort of impact on your own leisure trips that you're taking. So that's also a subject of great debate. And so far, the research that's been developed has come back and said they cannot tell you that you can't travel personally. What they can do is mandate that you take a COVID test prior to returning to the workforce, or workplace. Now, if you're working from home, there's obviously less of a concern. Since I'm working from home, as long as I'm not going to be coming into contact with clients or prospects or my work colleagues, then there's no need for me to take a COVID test, because I could have COVID right now. You're safe. But that said, if the employees are going to be returning to the workforce and being around colleagues, the companies can mandate that if you've been traveling over a long weekend or something, that you take a COVID test prior to returning to work. So there is that aspect that's sort of the current state of how things are. So we'll move to this next subject, which is, all right, well, if that's the case, companies can mandate travel, then what is the liability associated with duty to care? And I wrote an article on that front. And thank you, Chris, for referencing that. So I looked into this a little bit because actually this begins to touch on a broader, interesting development that's happening within the hospitality industry. And I referenced some of, I pulled out a little bit from the article on the left-hand side there, which is, so the concept of duty of care for companies is not new. It's been around forever. And high level, the definition of duty of care for a company is simply that it's the company's responsibility to take reasonable measures to keep their employees safe, regardless of whether they are working at the office or whether they are traveling on the road. And so for large Fortune 100, Fortune 500 companies that have a lot of executives that are on planes, and particularly with international travel, the concept of duty of care has sort of flexed, over the last decade or so as certain regions become unstable. And it turns out, so what is the duty of care, for instance, the company has if you're traveling in oil and gas and they're sending you to Panama or to, El Salvador or someplace that might have some instability from a government standpoint? Where is the liability for your company to make sure that they're not sending you as part of your job to a region that could, present some unnecessary risk? Well, bringing that into 2021, what I think we're going to begin to see is some legislation evolving associated with duty of care, because previously putting a business traveler on the road and being worried that they might catch a cold has not really fallen under the duty of care principle. However, when you can catch a virus that could be life-threatening, suddenly duty of care becomes an entirely new aspect, right? And so what we're seeing is a lot of, we're seeing this impact a lot of areas of hospitality. And one of those areas that it's impacting is these big corporate travel agencies, American Express Travel and Agencia, and some of these other firms that have big contracts with firms to plan and coordinate travel for executives. They're beginning to really look hard at where are we placing executives as they are traveling from a resort or from a hotel standpoint, because we need to be taking whatever realistic and reasonable measures there are to put those executives in an environment where we can defend the fact that, listen, we put that executive there because that hotel had, for instance, a published standard for cleanliness and published and present precautions taken to prevent transmission of COVID-19. So this concept of duty of care, I think, is going to continue to evolve as 2021 moves into 2022, and it is tied hand in hand with the return of travel that we all hope desperately to see happen. So it's kind of a sidecar issue that goes right along with it. And I think there are some opportunities that this is going to present for hotels that are smart and strategic about it, because there are things that you could be doing at your hotel that really apply to this duty of care issue and could put you in an advantageous position with these large corporate travel booking agencies, so that your hotel sort of pops to the top of the list of where should we be booking in Memphis or where should we be booking in San Antonio that would exercise the most precaution for this company's traveling executives. So, and we can talk a little bit more about that later as well. So let me go back to our, if we've got companies capable of mandating travel with executives, and companies recognize that there's this evolving concept of duty of care that used to be more about kidnapping and ransom K&R policies, and is now becoming more about keeping just the yous and me's of the world safe while we're on an airplane going to some domestic market, then where do companies fall in terms of mandating vaccination for their business travelers? And as we move down here, that issue again is one in which it's changing all the time. And where we're at today on that front is employers can mandate vaccinations among their business travelers. They can do that. However, if you see on the left-hand side here, I just took a screenshot. If you Google the subject, can they, you get one article that says, yes, they can. You get another article that says, no, they can't. And you get another one that says, maybe, depends on which lawyer you ask. So this is definitely an evolving subject where I think we'll begin to see some legislation stepping in and creating, perhaps helping resolve this issue in a more uniform fashion. I think it's probably a subject that right now is on a state by state and perhaps even employer by employer basis. But one thing is for sure, is that although I think the predominant opinion is that employers do have the right to require employees to get the COVID vaccine, they have to obey the same guidelines that they have always had to obey, which is they've got to be prepared to exempt employees based on disabilities or based on religious objections to having the vaccine. And what that means is they need to make accommodations that include perhaps allowing those employees to work remotely, or moving those employees into a function in which not being vaccinated doesn't create a risk for the other employees at the company. So, there's always going to be that sort of overriding component that doesn't go away. But from a status of the industry where we're at, March 15th or whatever, 18th, 2021, that's kind of where we're at. There's I think it's you got to do some research yourself into your own company, your own state, and expect that it may change on a go forward basis. So, from a travel standpoint, I think certainly those are challenges that I think are going to help or are going to impact our lives on a go forward basis, and impact our awareness of what's happening, and just how we interact at work and things. But then there's also hoteliers and what this means to us in our industry, and what those challenges are and how they translate for us as hoteliers in attracting business, in retaining business, in essentially delivering a product that is different today than it was just 2 years ago. And one of those things is going to be, how do you manage staffing as your occupancy grows? And this may be one of the singular most challenging aspects, because most companies hire they hire behind the curve, right? They don't hire ahead of it. Which means I can tell you that Pure Wellness, for instance, we're in thousands and thousands of rooms nationwide and hotels, and we've got a lot of general managers working the front desk today. So there are senior teams, hotels that previously had 5-7 people that were working the front desk to check guests in, and you're looking at now at best 2 or 3 folks working the front desk, and those are senior team members. So there's a large portion of the population in hotels, I don't have to tell you guys, that haven't been brought back yet. And I don't know that there's a clear indication on when that tide is going to turn, but there's clearly some positive indications on the amount of vaccines that are getting out there, the amount of people getting vaccinated, and the efficacy of the vaccine in helping to abate the spread of the virus. So we all hope that is an indication that travel is going to come back and that occupancy is going to start to rise, even though I think everybody on this webinar realizes that that's probably going to happen in a more or less uniform fashion. And as that happens, that means that all of you are going to be fighting to claim back the same front desk people who you had prior, in a market that's going to become very competitive for those people. So it could create a bit of a challenging environment. Good, it's a good problem to have, and we all want to have that problem, but it may become a bit of a challenging environment in terms of a scrap for labor, as hotels attempt to reclaim and rebuild their staff that they had across the board, from the front desk to housekeeping to engineering and other places. So that's a challenge that is going to be very real. Another challenge that it's going to be needing to address is, how do we create confidence in guests in returning to our hotel? And I'll share, this is something that I grabbed from booking.com. And the simple solution on this front is you need to be very and perhaps overly aware of communicating what you're doing at the property to interact to reduce the likelihood of transmission for the guest. So visibility is key, and that's what you're seeing that Booking.com is saying here. Is it's not enough to simply continually spray down surfaces and have a very rigid cleaning routine. You need to talk about it. You need to make it present within the lobby. You need to make it present on your website, present in your booking chain of communications with guests, so that they're aware that you have a very rigid and routine protocol that you're taking in order to ensure their safety. Obviously, practicing physical distancing is a CDC guideline that we all need to, that we're all familiar with. I think there's some speculation out there about how long, for instance, physical distancing, wearing masks is going to still be around once the vaccine begins to really significantly impact the number of people catching COVID-19. For for my sake, I can tell you this: I don't see a time going forward when I won't be wearing a mask to go to the grocery store, when I won't be wearing a mask to go to a restaurant, or to be in a large public area around many other people. I think we're stuck with that, no matter what. I think we'll begin to see the rates of infection certainly drop, but we're also unfortunately beginning to see that there are variants springing up all the time. So the concept of having a virus out there that is evolving to survive, which is what viruses do, and that's going to require successive versions of a vaccine. I think that's just the future, and we're all going to deal with it. So, with respect to that, I think a lot of the big chains, Hilton and Marriott, Hyatt, and others, have done a really good job in creating these rigid cleaning protocols, and then pushing those out to the public to make the public aware of what those cleaning protocols are, in order to drive guest confidence in coming back to the hotel and feeling safe in doing so. I will say, I'll add another slide here that I grabbed, again, based on recent research. And that's this emerging reality that pretty much, if you look at the cleaning protocols that are taking place within hotels from the big chains, it's hyper focused on surface cleaning, right, and routine surface cleaning. However, I think there is this emerging realization that most of COVID transmission is happening through the air. It's happening from person to person. It's very rarely happening from people coming in contact with a surface that might have the COVID virus on it. And I didn't want to wear everybody out with a bunch of science about COVID-19, but I think part of the reason that the transmission rate of COVID from a surface is extremely low is because COVID doesn't last very long on a surface. And by that, I mean, on average, the COVID virus remains viable on a surface for about a minute, and then it's no longer viable. So most of the transmission is happening through the air, from person to person. So that's why I don't see masks going away anytime soon. I don't see the plastic barriers, plexiglass barriers going away anytime soon. And what I do think that you'll begin to see in this year and on a go forward basis is the big brands and companies everywhere taking a more proactive stance in treating the air in these common area environments to remove airborne particulate matter pathogens that include the COVID-19 virus. So just mark my words, you heard it here first. I see that coming in a big way. So, your hoteliers, we've got guests that are going to be coming back, and we want to make sure that that we're able to meet new guest expectations. So what are those new guest expectations, right? And some of this is going to be no-brainer for probably most of the people on here. But again, the value of research. Here's what I was able to find that I thought was kind of a nice referenceable infographic. The future is guests just don't want to interact with they, or rather they want to interact with as few people at the hotel as they possibly can. So if, as a hotelier, if you're not already looking into contactless check-in, right? Mobile check-in. If you're not already looking into mobile key, so they don't have to use a physical key or a key card. If you're not already looking into methods that the guest can primarily through their phone interact with the hotel from a concierge or from a room service or services of that kind. My advice, I'm not in that space. My advice is you should be, because I think we're going to find that on a go forward basis, the mobile device, and much, much more, by the way, than any sort of pre-existing device that is in the room, you're going to find that the guest is going to expect to be able to use their phone to interact with the hotel and take care of 90% of any sort of services or interaction that that they need to work with the hotel on. Because I'm the person that handles my phone. You don't. I don't give my phone to people. So my phone is safe. But regardless of what you're able to put in the room in terms of your safety and cleaning protocols, I know there's a lot of technology out there that has touch screens, for instance, that are in the room that that guests can navigate by touching. I'm not touching that thing, and I don't think I'm alone in not being willing to put all of my confidence that somebody did a good job of cleaning the surface that, by virtue of its very definition, people have been touching a lot in order to navigate or order things. So I think you're going to see a rise of voice technology within rooms, these Alexa devices and things that that are in rooms. And you're going to see an expectation from guests that they're able to use their mobile device because it is private, it's personal, and it's capable of doing all of these things. So the technology is out there. And then, you can see here that, the vast majority, 68% of people have avoided staying at hotels because of the concern of contracting COVID. So again, just reinforcement of how important it is that we are being very forward with communicating the safety precautions that are being taken, very transparent about what's happening at the property to encourage guests to come back. And then of course you've got 90% of guests that they think it's extremely important that they have a good understanding of what's happening at that hotel to ensure their safety. So finally, this brings us to
Brian,
yes.
I have a question on that, and I'm not really sure how to type it. I was trying with the voice control, like the Alexas in the room. That makes total sense because then you're not touching it.
Right.
But then do hotels or properties fall into any like privacy violations or security type, because like that was a big deal with the Google Nests and the Homes and the Alexa that, yeah, she's not recording you all the time, but does that then make the hotel kind of liable for that?
So conspiracy theorists everywhere are completely on board that these devices are in hotels to listen all the time and penetrate the Big Brother component. The truth is, the Alexa devices that you're finding in hotels today although they may appear similar to what is in your house, they're actually not. It isn't hotels that are just taking these at-home devices and plugging them in to work at the property. And there are specialty providers that exist for the purpose of deploying Alexa devices within hotels, because it is a really truly different protocol that exists within these devices at hotels. So from a liability standpoint, in terms of what is captured on one of these devices in a hotel, I'm not entirely sure what that is, or legally what that might bind a hotel to. I think it's a solid question if, as a hotelier, you're looking into deploying some of this Alexa type technology within your hotel. I would ask that. I would ask what kind of protection that company is able to provide the hotel in the event that that device captures a conversation that for whatever reason leaves the room, or for any myriad of reasons, I guess. I mean, let's face it, in the hotel industry, there's a lot of risk. Nobody wants to be sued. So it's just smart to ask questions associated with limiting your liability. And I think you're going to see guests wanting that type of technology for the very reason that it doesn't cause them to have to touch anything. But for the same reason, perhaps if you can deliver that same type of functionality through the guest smartphone, you might be better off doing so, because your liability of using the guest smartphone to do anything is pretty much nothing, right? It's their smartphone. So that really doesn't fall on a product that you are putting in the room for them to use. You're simply conveying that utility to their own phone. Does that make sense? I'm not a lawyer.
Yeah, that does make a lot of sense. And I think that you're right. I think that using the smartphone just to access a property app is better. I think we'll see everyone's apps improving much more than they were before the pandemic.
Without a doubt. And so I would simply say that if you're not currently looking into it as a hotelier on this webinar, my advice would be you should. You should start looking into what options are out there for you to be leveraging a guest's mobile device to deliver the kinds of services, especially check-in, check-out, and room access, that are the big three, I think, for guests from an expectation standpoint. And then if you can overlay that with their ability to order room service or book a tour, or order their valet, for the valet to bring their car up, or whatever the case may be, even more better, right? The phone is capable of doing all of those things. It's really just up to you to leverage that for the benefit of your property. So then moving on with the discussion around, in particular, how can we shorten the path to profitability at the property? And how can, for instance, we leverage premium room types to do that, which is it's certainly not the only way, the only tactic that you can deploy to shorten that recovery time frame. But it is a proven one, and it's one that I think has a lot of flexibility, right? So understanding what makes a premium room, I think, is one of the more exciting aspects about it, because there's a lot of flexibility associated with what is it that you would need to do to create a premium room at your property. Sometimes you are blessed with a property that has a phenomenal view. Fantastic, right? It's like right there present in front of you. How to create a premium room is create premium rooms out of those guys that just have a view of the lake or the ocean or whatever the case may be, right? You may not be that case. You may be the guy across the street in the 3-story building instead of the 16-story building. And every one of your views is not something that people would consider premium. That doesn't mean that you can't create a premium room type in your hotel. You just weren't handed it by having a phenomenal location, like the guy across the street on the beach. So, there is the location-based premium room, right? And then there is, for instance, the size-based premium room, which you may have larger rooms, you may have a suite, right? Or you can configure perhaps your property to have larger rooms if in fact today you don't. So you can create a premium room type out of just difference of size from a room standpoint, and generate some additional revenue on that front. And suites, of course, are a great example of this, right? And lastly, we look at sort of feature based. So, all right, well, from a feature standpoint, you may have a room that's a normal size, but it's got a balcony. And even, believe it or not, even if the balcony doesn't have an amazing view, the fact that the room has a balcony is perhaps enough to make it differentiated and worthy of being considered a premium room type for an upgrade. So there are a lot of ways, right, that you can create premium rooms within your property. And another way of creating a premium room type, for instance, would be adding amenities to the room. So perhaps you add a nice coffee maker, or you add a mini bar, or you add nuts and whatever, a tray of some kind. So I think the upside is there's a lot of ways of getting creative when it comes to creating premium room types within your property. And those are, there's a lot of flexibility on that front. And I think it's exciting what premium room types can do for hotels that are disadvantaged, if you will, because they aren't sitting on a beach, or they aren't sitting on a lake, or they don't have a beautiful vista or things along those lines. It's a solid way for hoteliers to generate some incremental revenue by creating these premium room types. So premium room types generate incremental revenue actually in a number of ways. So we all gravitate initially to, well, of course, I'm able to get $20 a night more for this premium room than I can for my standard room. Duh, that's how it generates incremental revenue. But it does so in more ways than that. And as a revenue optimization person, that's part of the equation. The other part of the equation is the fact that creating premium room types in your property is actually reducing the number of standard room types in your property. So as travel returns, as groups return, as meetings return, you're going to, by adding premium room types to your property and shrinking the inventory of standard rooms, you're putting yourself in an opportunistic position to actually capture that higher revenue as the inventory at your property is absorbed and you've got additional people coming in. You may, your occupancy may simply reflect the fact that we'd love to book you at the property. The only thing we have left are premium rooms, and those are at a slightly higher price point. So certainly you have to be able to pay off the value of the premium room, right? Or you're going to get some upset guests about the fact that they were charged a higher rate for a room that, by all intents and purposes, looks exactly like the one next door. So you need to deliver on the premium room experience. However, the fact that premium rooms decrease your amount of standard room inventory is just one more way that they actually do drive incremental revenue. And then the other aspect is the fact that premium room types, well, there's a couple of other, right? Having more options for guests when they show up at your hotel can be a differentiator and an advantageous aspect for your property in the market, because different guests gravitate to different types of experience. So for you to have more than just a standard product at your hotel simply gives you a better opportunity of capturing guest business that might prefer a different type of product. And it makes you, I think, it puts your property in a stronger position as a competitor in that market. And especially today, as we know for a fact that the travelers of 2021 and going forward are going to have different expectations and different demands, like we've been talking about, that hotels are going to need to flex to address. And I think those hotels that do so in an effective manner stand to benefit from claiming higher market share within their market. So you could, I mean, stealing market share, or just claiming market share. We'll call it earning it. And they also stand to benefit by recovering faster because they're going to get a higher rate for those rooms. So the shameless plug portion of the presentation has arrived, in which I'll just share the pure wellness premium room type that we create. So important for me to note, pure wellness is not now and has never been in the COVID abatement business. That's not what we're about. For 15 years, actually, Pure Wellness has been creating a pure room in every major hotel brand that is focused traditionally on creating a hyper clean environment for guests who have sensitivities to cleaning products and to dust and to a host of other things, right? So we've been creating these rooms in hotels nationally, primarily focused on hypoallergenic room types for guests that are sensitive. However, in the process of doing so, what we've done is we've also been creating rooms that are virus and bacteria free, because part of our process of creating these pure rooms is eliminating any sort of air or surface pathogen that might trigger an allergic reaction for a guest. So although we're not in that business and never have been, these rooms are essentially the cleanest room that you could find in a hotel. And that's because there's a patented process that we go through to create the rooms. And you can see it on the screen. There's an element where we're cleaning the HVAC unit, right? And all of you hoteliers that are on the webinar today know there are HVAC units in your rooms that could use to be cleaned. But that's part of our process, is cleaning the HVAC unit. We then use an ozone machine and ozone is toxic to humans. But the upside is what ozone does, it depletes all of the oxygen within a room, and it will kill everything in that room. So needless to say, that as the largest wellness room provider in the hospitality industry, we're very, very cautious in how we create these pure rooms in hotels, and we take many, many measures to enforce the fact that we do it in a very safe fashion. It takes about 4 hours to create a pure room in a hotel, just one room. So the ozone eliminates any sort of living organism, virus, bacteria, or otherwise within the room. And then we go through a process of using a special treatment to clean the carpets and the soft surfaces. We then apply we use another cleaning process to remove all of the now inert or dead material from all of the walls, all of the surfaces. We then apply a special shield product on all of the hard surfaces that actually has a molecular structure that creates a residual kill capability for up to 90 days, meaning that any airborne particulate matter that falls on that surface, the molecular structure that is residual actually looks like little spikes, and those little spikes penetrate the membrane of that bacteria or virus that falls on it and makes it inert immediately. So there's no potential for those to remain active on any type of surfaces. And then we add an air purifier device in every one of our rooms that has a patented DFS technology that is manufactured by only one company, and that that DFS technology is capable of eliminating 99.99% of all airborne bacteria. That is 17 times more effective than even the strongest HEPA filter. And it is many times, it's like the coronavirus is a 0.01 micron in size. Our air purification devices eliminate particulate matter down to 0.007. So many times smaller than the coronavirus. These air purifiers are removing the particulate matter from the environment. So although it was never the intent to create COVID-free rooms, that's essentially what a pure room is. It is the purest environment that you can create within a hotel. So, and then there are residual visits that are part of the program where we maintain that equipment and keep those rooms certified as pure wellness or pure rooms within the hotel. So I mentioned that these rooms are present in every major stay brand. And to give you an idea, perhaps, of what that means from a metric standpoint, and I'm providing this information, it's directly applicable to pure rooms, but it is perhaps indirectly applicable to what you as a hotelier could achieve by creating just premium rooms at all at your property. From a pure room standpoint within our Hilton portfolio, of which there are hundreds of hotels that stretch within all of the respective brands within Hilton, we've seen an average room occupancy of 61%. And here's what's interesting is even as occupancy has fallen off across the board for every one of the major brands, just as it has for every hotelier that's on this call, we haven't seen a comparative fall off on the pure room occupancy. In fact, although the overall occupancy of the hotel has fallen, the pure room occupancy has remained fairly static. And I think it's because guests that are showing up are realizing that these pure rooms are on offer by the hotel. And for an additional $20 to stay in an environment that is certified to eliminate any sort of airborne virus or bacteria, for them in this environment seems like a pretty good deal. So hoteliers have had a fantastic success in getting the upsell rate for the pure rooms. And we're seeing a great deal actually of our current client portfolio that are adding a number of pure rooms to their hotels. So anyway, these are some metrics that you're seeing in terms of paid premium occupancy. About a $20 upsell rate is what we're seeing within the Hilton portfolio on average. And then, per room incremental revenue generated is about $22.77. So we have a 10 room minimum per hotel, just because of the amount of labor that goes into creating these rooms. So in a Hilton portfolio, you're looking at about 20 something $1,000s of incremental revenue for the hotel, just off of if they had the minimum of 10 rooms within their property. So looking at Hyatt, you're going to see something fairly similar, right? And again, with a 62% occupancy rate, the 22.7 paid premium occupancy. And the difference between the average pure room occupancy and the paid premium occupancy is because a lot of these hotels and a lot of these brands use the pure wellness rooms for more than just upsell rooms to the transient traveler. They're using them as upsell or upgrade rooms for their highest loyalty tier members as well. So they're using them for a number of purposes, and I'll share a story as well in terms of strategically how hotels are using these rooms in a very innovative way. So you can see again a 21.82 average upsell value from our Hyatt hotel portfolio, and right there around that 2,000 per room revenue standpoint. and finally some metrics from Marriott. And I can tell you that, interestingly enough, one of the strategies that are being deployed by these properties that have the pure wellness rooms, they are, we talked previously about how the large travel booking agencies are becoming aware of this duty of care issue and concern from their clients. And so they're paying a special attention to what opportunistically what steps they can take in booking executives into hotels where they can show that they took an extraordinary, if you will, step to keep that executive safe. Well, as American Express Travel and Egencia and these other guys become aware of the pure room inventory in these hotels, that's becoming a preferred standard for them to easily check the box that we did everything we could to keep these executives safe. But even more interesting is how these properties are able to go to large corporate providers in their market, large companies, which historically perhaps they were getting a block of rooms on an annual basis from that company that brought in visitors. What we're seeing is a lot of our hotels going to those companies and saying, listen, we have an inventory of these pure wellness rooms, which the company may or may not even have been aware previously that existed at these hotels. And these hoteliers are using these pure wellness rooms as a bargaining tool in order to capture a larger share of room block commitment from these big employers that are in their areas that bring in people all the time. And I'll use an example. We've got a property in Boston that happens to sit right next to Liberty Mutual, their corporate office. And Liberty Mutual had been sharing out among 10 different hotels their load of, I guess they bring in a lot of insurance agents or something for training and stuff on a regular basis. So they'd been giving business to about 10 different hotels within Boston. And this particular property that was located right next to them, so a very advantageous location, was only getting a small share of that business travel. So by implementing pure rooms within their property, they were able to secure and double the commitment from Liberty Mutual on an annual basis because they committed to putting their traveling executives into these pure rooms that were at their property, which again, from a duty of care standpoint, was something that Liberty Mutual saw as why wouldn't we take that step and put these executives into these rooms as a measure of showing that we care, of taking the utmost care of these folks while they're on the road. So finally, I'll share that, this is an example, for instance, of what we see from a pure room standpoint, but there's every realistic expectation that as you create premium rooms within your hotel through whatever mechanism you choose to do it, the point I want to convey here is that guests are vocal about their experiences. I can only speak, of course, to their experiences within pure rooms, but word of mouth marketing among your guests on social platforms is invaluable. And as a hotelier, you look to reduce the time back to profitability for your property, the more social goodwill you can be generating, the more word of mouth marketing you can be generating out there associated with your property, it's worth its weight in gold. And for whatever, well, I'm not going to say for whatever reason, because I think the experience is worth it. And I think we've been very fortunate that guests that stay in pure rooms talk about their stay and they rave about their stay. And when they do so, they do it on Yelp, they do it on on Facebook, they do it on Twitter. So they're very vocal about how enjoyable their stay was, and they talk about the hotel. So it's not just a promotion of the pure premium room. It's really a promotion of the property overall. And then we have a lot of our hoteliers that also say very nice things about the guest experience that they have within their rooms as well. So in wrap up, I think, again, congratulations to all of us for still being around in 2021 after that awful, terrible year of 2020. But we're facing some fairly significant challenges on a go-forward basis that I think are addressable, are going to change the industry forever, in my mind, but create some opportunity at the same time for us to perhaps adopt a different strategy at the hotel level, and could create some opportunity for your particular hotel to capture some additional market share, to present itself perhaps in a different fashion than it has in the past, that could lead to decreasing the amount of time that you would expect to get back to pre-pandemic revenue levels, and on a go-forward basis, create an even higher level of profitability for the property through strategically applying the use of premium room types to drive some incremental revenue at your hotel. So clearly, if there's interest in talking about, in particular, pure wellness rooms, you can get some additional information from our website. It's on your screen, pureroom.com, and then you can reach out to me directly, bshed@pureroom.com. My email's right there. Happy to answer any questions associated with certainly Pure Rooms. And then, of course, I'm happy to be helpful in whatever ways possible as well, from research around just premium room types in general, or other things that we've talked about so far. That's
Great.
what I have.
Thank you so much, Brian. That was really good information. That was a deeper dive than I was expecting to get in a short amount of time. So definitely appreciate you being with us. We will be sending out the recording, so we'll make sure that when that does go out, we let everyone know they're still able to ask questions, and maybe we can connect on social as well to get some conversation going behind this.
Fantastic. Well, I appreciate you having me on. Hopefully, the information was valuable for the people that joined us, and I appreciate everybody taking some time to spend that today with me and all of us.
Great. Thanks, everyone. We will see you again soon.
Thanks so much, Brian.
Sure thing. Appreciate it.